Well, hey everyone, it's Andy with Jumpstart Mastery, and I'm here with my good friend and colleague for some years, Tim Bruhn. Tim, rather than me kind of laying the framework for someone I talk to, which is generally what I do, um, you have such a niche, uh, a niche organization that uh, goes right to the heart of the observations that we make in care and services about things that are happening in the world um, when it comes to people living with substance misuse, serious mental illness, and the unhoused. And I'm hoping that you can let our community know a little bit about what you do. And I think from that, they're going to derive why this conversation might be meaningful.
Yeah, by all means. So I am the owner of Bio One South Sound, BOSS for short. We do sometimes three, sometimes four things, depending on who I'm talking to, pretty well. Primarily, we do biohazard remediation. What is that? That means if there's been a homicide, suicide, or unintended death, we're the ones you would call to clean that up. Because of hepatitis B and other bloodborne illnesses, we don't want a church group or
Right.
a cousin or a nephew to come by and clean that up. It's not good for them. The second thing I say that we do is we address hoarding houses. We do a lot of those. So if you've ever seen the show Hoarders, you got a mess up to your neck. That's the kind of stuff that we can also help with.
Right.
The third thing, and we just got this, we just got our final certification for clandestine drug lab cleaning. So if there's a meth house, if there's a situation of fentanyl, it could be a rental Airbnb, someone's partying too hard. It could even be like a stolen car or a rented car.
Right.
We can address that. And then those are the three things I normally say that we do. But the fourth thing, and we're kind of getting into this right now, is dealing with homeless encampments. And typically, you'll see all of those things in an encampment. There will be biohazard. There will be these temporary structures made out of pallets and other things
Right.
where meth has been cooked.
Yep.
And there's always an outdoor hoard, just a bunch of trash, including human feces that has to be addressed and cleaned up.
This is a phenomena that occurs in a number of our housing initiatives, certainly in this state, definitely in Oregon and in California, and quite frankly in just about every other state where you're witnessing lots of news accounts of the struggles in communities with managing what appears to be an ever-growing population of unhoused people.
Mm-hmm.
And no one really talks about, to the degree that you can, the byproduct of that, which is your core business now.
Mm-hmm.
But what led us to this conversation was your ability to articulate what you're observing in the attributes of being human in those spaces. In other words,
Sure.
The thing that I found incredibly, potentially incredibly meaningful in a conversation with you is to make the public aware of what you see on that side of the continuum of service, because there's case management and mobile crisis and co-response and vouchers and entitlements and benefits, and then there's the, quite frankly, the mess surrounding all of that, and then the service providers that have to literally go and attend to the biohazards associated with it. And I asked you a unique question, and I'll ask it here in the context of this interview. As you encounter, and by all means, elaborate on the kind of job it is, if you feel that's necessary. But what are the big existential attributes that you are observing directly as you engage in this work?
Yeah.
What are the human qualities? How are people living when you witness this?
They're living desperately, right? I just visited a scene and I don't want to get into any details.
Yeah.
But there was a woman who has a home that cannot be habitable. It's not habitable at all. It's a level 5 hoard, and there is mold endemic throughout the entire home.
Right.
I opened the door, I smelled, and I completely exited because I didn't want that in my lungs. So I ran and grabbed my respirator,
Yeah.
and some gloves so I can go in and take pictures. Okay. So that's just the physical part of it. The other part of it is that she was in extraordinary denial about it.
Right.
She thought, well, she described it as a mess. And I said, well, we can call it a mess if you prefer to use that word, but it's a level 5 mess.
Right. We have criteria for levels of mess.
And she was shocked when I told her. She asked how long it would take to fix. And I said, well, it would take minimum 5 days. It could be 7 days. I won't know until we start getting to work. and she was also surprised that it would take perhaps 4 or 5 40-yard dumpsters to get all that stuff out of there.
Yeah. So denial. What's
Denial.
another human condition that you're observing as you move about in these spaces?
Yeah, there's 3 other things that I've noticed. Extraordinary amounts of depression.
Depression. So, huge.
It's often comorbid with alcoholism or other substance abuse. And for people with hoarding disorder, that is directly related to bipolar disorder. So there's some mania going on there as well, and then a depressive flip. So it all ties together.
And Tim, just so people know that you're just not opining as a biohazard guy, you and I met in the fire service.
That's
and
right.
Just as I was exiting, you were getting in.
Yeah.
And you're an emergency medical technician.
Yes.
You're a firefighter.
Correct.
You respond to all of the events in the community in which we live in. And we chose this place today so we could share a little bit of the beauty that is in the Pacific Northwest as we're discussing a very solemn topic, and that is denial, depression, substance misuse, and serious mental illness in the context of where Tim is in the service continuum. Are you seeing any of these sites that you go to, Tim? Is anybody that you are interacting with thriving while living in those conditions?
Absolutely not.
Right.
No.
So I'm going to take a risk and just wax for a moment about the way in which our legislators and people in positions of authority can describe the services that surround these environments. People who are engaged in extraordinary ideological possession without any knowledge of what's really happening in encampments and in small house communities where we support people who are in need of housing, and we have, in many cases, structure in the living environment there. But in order to support someone on their journey to recovery, in some parts of the country, and it's certainly the case in Washington, ongoing relationship to the substance is not a condition that is disapproved. People in these environments continue to use substances, and when that occurs, ecologies around that come with it. So that means the people who manufacture it, the people who deal it, the people who engage in the trade of it, and those who consume it. And on where we are in the service continuum, not only in delivering training and education, but we have a very special project-oriented group of people that help our property managers and providers engage people served when surfaces have popped hot beyond legal limits for meth and fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And now we need to send a message to them that it's time to move down the road, but they don't want to go. And eviction court in King County, for example, is 6 to 8 months backlogged. Mm-hmm. So a property manager or a provider is looking at extraordinary expense and effort to evict someone from a place where a safety hazard is being created, not only by their use, but in these buildings We have people who are manufacturing it and distributing it. And millions of dollars are being spent in abating these buildings. I mean, I would imagine that's one of the reasons you made an entrepreneurial decision to get into this space, because it seems to me your business is booming right now.
Well, booming is we're still our first year. Right?
Yeah, fair enough.
We're still building up. We do have a contract with the state, which we're doing, and that's good. We just put a bid in for another City of Tacoma situation.
Okay.
And there's another one for Pierce County.
Good.
So I'm focusing on government. We do get calls from private citizens as well. We're doing all right. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
We're doing all right.
When you envision the cohorts that you're working with, people who hoard, people who live with substance misuse or serious mental illness, what do you see on the horizon in terms of any other service in the continuum trying to mitigate that? Are you observing anyone concerned about the necessity for what you do?
Yeah, I mean, we have had contact with a nonprofit, an NPO called Rise, Hilltop.
Yeah.
They have a small housing village, and they're addressing it, or they're trying to address it. So we've partnered with them. I have a whole car full of men's clothing that I'm going to be donating this week, probably today. But they're stretched thin. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to pin them down because they're in crisis mode. They're trying to do this work, and so they need support. There's another one called Schoolie Foundation. Nice guy, and he's got buses with portable showers to help so people can get clean.
So you're witnessing like some grassroots attempts at intervention in these kinds of outcomes. Are you seeing any agency intervention to reduce the frequency of these kinds of situations?
I'll be honest, I haven't found that yet. I'm looking. Most of it is...
You're not alone there.
Most of it's the aftermath. It's the cleaning. It's they call it public nuisance cleaning. So I've seen the results, not prevention at all.
Mm-hmm. And just so the community who's watching us is clear, we're not here to gripe about this. We're here to raise awareness about, and in the case of Tim in particular, here's a gentleman who has an enterprise in attending to the very clear safety and life safety and epidemiological safety outcomes that are associated with let's say, unconditional support of people that are living with serious mental illness, substance misuse, conditions, whether it be deeply imprinted trauma or family of origin issues, and we're not engaging people with interventions that reduce the likelihood of future emergency. Remember, that's not my idea. The core goal of any meaningful behavioral health intervention in crisis is to reduce the likelihood of future emergency. And that's been a bailiwick phrase of ours in crisis de-escalation work for a very long time. And it would seem to me that when we consider housing first or people who are suffering from particular disorders like hoarding, our interventions do not seem to be reducing the likelihood of future emergency. We're seeing recurring crisis where these outcomes are resulting in conditions that do not suggest that people are recovering and the frequency of these events are reducing. We're seeing something very different. And sadly, the interventions that we are seeing are continually being peddled as if they're going to result in some kind of meaningful outcome for people where, you can receive a voucher, you can move into a building, you can continue to use substances, and that if we continue to make overtures to you once a month, once every 2 months about 12-step recovery or addiction recovery, that you'll eventually get to a place where you'll stop using these substances. This is not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is an industrial complex that's being created where people are enabled to engage in these behaviors, and now we are engaging with firms like Tim's to deal with the outcomes of that. I, for one, am someone who emphasizes that the recurring crisis is signal that the intervention is not working. So, it's in the Bible. It's written, you're always going to have the poor. I'm not proposing that we can get to a place where this is never necessary, but to see someone as thoughtful as you enter this space with a desire to try to make a difference and reduce the likelihood and get services upstream so that what you're doing becomes less necessary in the long term, I think is an incredibly, socially conscious thing to do. It's why I wanted to have this conversation, because there are lots of people, when I think of a cleanup organization, I think of construction cleanup. Mm-hmm. There's no real strong need for sensitivities around supporting people in that setting. But in this environment, you're in the people business. You're discussing with people their denial, their depression, their behavior, and I think it's an almost superhero thing that you're doing, in my opinion.
I don't know about that. The thing that I've come across, two things. One, sometimes the cleaning is secondary.
Right.
You go there and the cleaning is almost like a ritual. And sometimes it is just that. It's 10 bags of trash and you wash the walls and do some windows. Anyone can do it. But what the real work sometimes is sitting down and listening to them.
Talk about that a little more. Share an anecdote of people's affect when you show up. Are they feeling relief that you're there because you're going to improve things and let them know what life can look like in the physical world? In other words, we're going to take this and convert it to like a clean slate. How are they experiencing you?
I mean, you go there and you do the work, right? So for one client, it was cleaning her kitchen floor, running the carpet cleaner through her small apartment. And again, anyone could do that. She had a physical health problem, so there was a mess that we could deal with.
Yeah,
we had the right enzymes and all that.
Right.
But what really, and she appreciated it. She was glowing about it, and all of our clients are extremely happy after we're done with the ritual.
Right.
But the real work was sitting there and looking around her house, and she had a collection of really interesting Western paraphernalia. And so I was like, hey, where's the dolly? She's like, oh, we've got Dolly Parton right there. And, I said, well, look at all these wood carvings of all these Western scenes. They're gorgeous.
Yeah.
She's like, I did those. And I was like, and then she showed me other artwork that she had engaged in. And I don't know if anyone has sat down and marveled at her artistic skill and noted it.
I have to imagine that when people are present when you show up, there's got to be an experience of shame that they're having to manage in some cases. And the denial could be like a secondary way of managing the shame. Mm-hmm. But what you see through the mess is the person. And you remind them of something more than the thing that you're there to do, which I think is profound. Yeah. What happens, Tim, when it's all done? What are they like when the place is, you've met with them, you've talked with them, you've restored a healthy environment? What generally happens right at that moment?
So there's two things. When I first get there are often tears of shame as they're talking through what's happening. And then when we're done, there's tears of joy. Often they'll call their case managers and just gush about what we've done.
Yeah.
So you kind of light a path towards hope.
Yeah. That's what I see. Like, you give them a glimpse of a reset, so to speak. So what's on the horizon for you? What does it take to to grow your enterprise to a level of activity where you're making a dent, let's say, in the frequency of these outcomes? How do you see that happening?
Yeah, you're asking about my strategic and tactical planning. Okay, we can do that.
All right.
Yeah, so like I said, we've been open for less than a year. In that time, we were mostly relying on digital footprint to get people to call us, so our SEO and PPC on the internet. That's not sufficient because that stuff is unreliable.
Yeah.
Google changes their rules all the time.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot more foot traffic. We have a nascent deal going on with the Muckleshoot tribe with their housing authority.
Great.
We have that DSHS contract as well.
Yes.
So in order to grow the business, I think we need to have a lot more contracts in place.
Yep.
Once we have that sort of stable footing, we can start expanding.
Yeah.
Like I said, we just got our drug cert in place. So now it's time for us to find all the poison and get rid of that. So that might be, I don't know, calling Starbucks and saying, hey, if someone messes up your bathrooms, give us a call.
Who are the regulatory oversight bodies to your work?
So that's the Department of Health.
Okay.
They're the ones that issue the certs for drug abatement, environment as well. So after you get done washing the walls of meth or fentanyl, for example, there's wastewater. Well, what do you do with that? You can't just throw that in the sewer system because you'll get the fish hooked on drugs.
Right.
Right. So, so you talk to the, Department of Environment, figure out an SOP that makes sense. We have one, and by the way, that not everyone is going to be using. We think we have a good system in place for that.
Okay, fair enough. And when people want to work for you, like if you want to hire people, what's the, let's say, what are the prerequisites? How would you describe to someone coming into this field how they need to comport themselves professionally, emotionally, and what prerequisites might they have academically or in terms of certification?
Sure. For certifications, you need to have your bloodborne pathogens that you can get from Red Cross, a number of agencies. Once you become, if you become a permanent member of the team, I will have you go through HAZWOPER 40. It is literally 40 hours of sitting in front of a, slideshows and going through and taking tests. It's grueling. I'm going to need you to be able to lift, 50, 60 pounds because we have trash cans full of debris that go into the dumpster.
Right.
So you got to be physically healthy and fit to be able to do that.
Yes.
You can't be on any substance abuse situation. You can't be on opioids or anything. But if you want to smoke weed when you're done with the day, I don't care.
Right.
And you can't come to work high.
Yeah.
And I guess the big thing is you have to really comport yourself with a level of empathy because sometimes the client will be there on scene. So you don't crack jokes. You don't take stuff from the scene.
Yeah. Or I would imagine you don't engage in commentary like, man, look at this, or how, like all of those things have to be set aside.
Yeah.
This is almost, you described it. I love the word you gave it, the ritual. So to undertake that with some degree of, sacredness, so to speak, you're helping a human being who's in a state of living that requires really epidemiological emergency intervention.
Yeah.
You are there because things are an emergency,
Yes.
not because things are on the way to becoming an emergency.
No.
It's already a hazard, and you have criteria for this. There are levels and regulatory descriptions of hazard, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. I often call ourselves the last responders because I take the work seriously. It's life-changing work. It's very meaningful work. And so it's, not to make it so flowery, but it's a cause for me. It's, it's a calling.
Yeah, I sense that. And while we didn't talk about it, let's wrap up with this particular topic. There are people in villages and encampments and so forth that die. And you're there not just dealing with human waste and trash and biohazard concerns due to living, you're also there dealing with those concerns following someone's death.
Correct.
And can you describe for our viewers what you go through emotionally when, and your people, when they have to attend to a scene? I mean, you and I have been on who knows how many calls for the fire department where we are essentially present with the deceased while we wait for the medical examiner to come and collect the person, and we have to put the person in a bag and we have to wait. Now you're on a side of the enterprise where you're physically in the space immediately following an event. There could be staff or personnel that have been emotionally impacted by this. You're there in that setting. Talk a little bit about what that's like.
Well, we had a suicide in a vehicle, and this is kind of a family enterprise. My oldest son goes with me on these scenes.
Yeah.
He's got all the training. He knows how to deal with it. And we spent 6 hours cleaning this vehicle out.
6 hours?
Yeah. The blood was profound. It was in the driver's seat. The seat was soaked through. And when it comes to porous substances, you don't clean it. You're just getting ready for the car to be totaled.
Yeah.
So we had to clean brain matter, bone fragments, all the bodily fluids. And, at one point, my kid stopped and says, okay, I've had my limit. He found some brain matter hanging from a piece of hair on the headliner. I said, okay, go take a minute, go get some water.
Yeah.
Let's walk it off. We'll talk it out afterwards.
Yep.
And you always have to. You get done with the job and you circle back and you have some Thai food and you talk it out.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say that if anyone's going to be in this line of work, the affect that you have always had, like before you even were getting into this, you have a completely self-regulated, calm affect and presentation. It would seem to me that while it may not be a prerequisite, it serves the people that work for you and the people you serve, because you're able to engage in a lot of, this is not simple work. This is complex work. I imagine that there are various chemicals and rules and PPE that have to be donned at specific times. And you're not going to do that if you're all emotionally aroused over the conditions that you're in.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know before we had that vehicle if I can deal with aftermath of an unintended death. But I had, I guess, the wherewithal to contain that and treat it appropriately. Yeah, you can't panic and you can't be emotional. You just have to understand that that's someone else's story and leave it to them. Your part of the story is to do the cleaning and set that path so that they can go forward in their future.
That's so beautiful. For agency personnel, managers, supervisors that might want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
You can email me at tim@bio1southsound.com. Send me your resume. If we get this Tacoma contract, I'm going to need to assemble 3 teams to do full-time work all the time.
Is it bio number 1 or bio ONE?
It's all spelled out, BIOONE, southsound.com. But yeah, things are heating up, figuratively and literally. As the summer happens, more bad smells are going to happen, so we're going to get more calls. So yeah, drop me a line. Let me know.
Thank you so much for this time.
Absolutely.
And I hope that you enjoyed this perspective on the service continuum of people who are in need of case management, vouchers, services for living with homelessness, services for living with substance misuse and serious mental illness. This is a part of the continuum. And I hope that you enjoyed an opportunity to get a glimpse into this particular side of the work. Thanks so much and take good care.
Thanks.